Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon, and I'm super pumped to have Don Spafford on the podcast today. This is a really cool episode. It talks a lot about how he started his real estate investing journey almost out of necessity. He was working a W-2 job. His income wasn't increasing as much as his expenses were. And so he kind of had two options: file for bankruptcy or borrow from his 401k to invest in a fourplex so he could generate some more income. Super, super interesting. And then we also talk about what he's doing now, which is RV resort syndication. So essentially campgrounds, RV campgrounds that he is syndicating across his investor network. So super interesting episode. Definitely stay and check it out. And let's jump right in.
Do you love your job, but want other investment options than your company's 401k and trying to pick stocks? If so, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, you will get actionable information for your passive real estate investment journey. Welcome back to another episode of Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon.
Don, hey man, how are you? Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for jumping on. And just maybe start us off. Give us a quick intro on you and what you're up to.
Thanks, Justin. My pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So a little bit about me. I currently live in South East Idaho, Idaho Falls, Idaho, for those that may not know. I grew up most of my life in or around Omaha, Nebraska. My background is in finance, investment science, portfolio management. I've worked almost 20 years basically in that industry for a firm that provides back office support for investment advisors. About 5.5 years ago or so, I started investing myself in real estate, and in 2017, bought a fourplex was my first property, and kind of just naturally progressed, I guess, to buying a couple more fourplexes, then starting into other commercial things, including some development projects, and eventually it's what I'm doing now with Happy Camper Capital, which is we buy and syndicate RV resorts, campgrounds, and marinas across the country. So definitely is a one of those paths that just kind of lays itself out before you, and you have to make the choice to follow it or not, I guess. And I'm happy to say I followed the hints and the opportunities as they came up for me, and that eventually got to the point now where I was able to leave my W-2 job at the end of 2022.
Awesome. No, that's awesome. There's a lot of cool things in there that I want to unpack for sure. But I guess maybe start us off a little bit with, you said you bought your first fourplex in 2017. What kind of got you into real estate? How did you kind of, get into or interested in kind of becoming an investor?
Yeah. So from my educational history, I was always wanting to be an investor, right? I was never looking into real estate investing. I was definitely buying stocks and things like that as I could. But it was, as I got older, I guess my family grew and expenses went up. I kind of always felt to the point where, there was not much more for me to, I guess, accomplish. I didn't have much hopes for, achieving a, super high income job or changing jobs or going back to school at some point, because it was just it required too much time and work that I did not have. So things were not in my favor. I kind of had that, we'll say, like a midlife crisis feeling, I guess, where I kind of felt like I didn't achieve the things I was hoping to achieve at that point in my life, and I didn't really see a way out. Debts were growing, but my income was not, and so I was kind of just looking for other options that are out there. Part of that goes back to when my wife is a realtor as well. She began as a realtor when we lived in Omaha still around 2011 or so. And so some of her very first clients were investors. So then that's kind of really where I had my eyes opened, I guess, a bit to want to learn more about that. I did not have the resources or the I guess education at that time to take any action and do anything about it. But I was definitely interested enough to the point I at least started reading. I read a couple books. And then it wasn't until we moved here to Idaho where I kind of got more, I guess, motivated to want to figure it out, because again, our debts were growing. I got to the point where I almost felt like, I needed to probably file for bankruptcy was the only solution to our problem we had. And so but I was like, well, before I do that, because I did not want to do that, I was like, maybe the only other solution possibly could be investing in real estate. And so, I found a way to make that happen without having much savings at all. In fact, I borrowed a loan from my 401k for that first down payment to buy that fourplex, and and also used a local lender that had a 10% down payment option. So I was able to get into it with very little money. Luckily it worked out well. Cash flowed decently to start off with, and it's led to many more things since then. So yeah, really for me it was that option was like, there was no other way to really create the future that I wanted to have with the financial freedoms and the passive income and things that I needed without having to spend the rest of my life working. And so that's really what got me motivated to want to make a way or find a way to make it happen.
That's so interesting that you kind of were almost backed up into a corner financially, right? Because your income wasn't increasing, your expenses were, and you had kind of a fork in a road. It's kind of file for bankruptcy and kind of take kind of quote unquote the easy way out, I guess, and kind of restart, or pivot and say, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to, go into a little bit more debt, take money out of your kind of retirement, right? Kind of pull some money out of kind of the, what you were supposed to live off of when you're 65, 70 plus, and push that into something that's going to generate income. Because, 401ks are great, but you can't use them really until your retirement, right? So but there are creative financing ways. And I want to kind of learn a little bit about the creative financing, how you kind of started to peel back that onion and figure out that you could pull money, take a loan from your 401k, and also kind of, use the 10% down method for, buying that fourplex. So maybe walk through kind of that process. How did you learn about this? The borrowing against your 401k, because, a lot of my audience are maybe where you were, in the sense that they had a good job, they liked their job, but maybe they weren't earning enough money, excuse me, that could afford them the lifestyle that they wanted, right? You were maybe in a position where your income wasn't growing as fast as your expenses were. Whereas maybe some people are sitting here with like, I have good income, but I want to have a better life and I want to generate more income, right? So, but I want to do that passively. So maybe talk about that process that you went through to kind of get that first deal.
Yeah. So I had at this point, okay, so we moved here in 2015. I kind of took a year or so to get settled in, and then 2016, just I guess kind of we call it fate or chance or coincidence or whatever, some kind of guiding light, I guess. But I'm typically not the one that will sit down and watch TV much, So one day though, I just happened to sit down, turn on TV, and like literally right there was a commercial for one of those guru seminars coming through town, teaching you how to flip homes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Something I wasn't really necessarily interested in doing that, but I was like, well, that sounds interesting. Let's go check it out, right? So, so just going to that meeting was first of all what kind of ignited all of it, I guess, in a way. I didn't follow the program or doing the things they were there to sell, but I did meet a guy at that meeting, just who introduced me to Bigger Pockets. So I'm sure most people here are very familiar with biggerpockets.com. At the time, it was brand new to me. I never heard of it before. So this was a unique thing. I was like, So I came home that night, looked it up, fell in love with their site and what they were doing with the podcast and webinars and everything else. So that was really that starting point. I started playing with their calculators, saw the value of that to help me to make sure I don't make a mistake in analyzing something.
Yep.
And so I immediately signed up for their pro membership. With that, I went back and listened to all of their previous podcasts. Being at this point, I was working from home. After I moved from Omaha to here, my employer allowed me to work remotely, so I was doing that. And so I would work. I would just let podcasts play during the day and just listen to all these podcasts throughout the entire day. And so my knowledge was increasing, my motivation was increasing, and like not long after they had like a 90-day challenge to find your first next property, something like that. So I took that as a personal challenge for me. I was like, all right, I'm gonna find this property. It was probably around early January, because I gave myself a goal by March. My birthday's in March, so I was like, by my birthday, I want to find that first property. So I was analyzing probably up to about 100 different properties per week, just looking at everything on the MLS and through I could find the off market. And so for me, but also it was on Bigger Pockets, where I guess in the forums, I think I heard or found out somebody mentioning using a local lender that does the 10% down payment. So I, of course, contacted that lender, got pre-approved and everything. And it was, I'm pretty sure on one of the podcasts I heard at some point, I don't remember exactly where, but somewhere in the podcast, I'm pretty sure is where I learned about using the leveraging your 401k, or maybe it was in a book or something.
Yeah.
Finding a way to access money you didn't think you had. Like don't just think of what's in your savings account is what you can use to invest, but what do you have access to? So it's like, okay, I have access to my 401k. So I can take a loan from that, look at the terms, everything involved with that. But at the time when I did this analysis on this fourplex, which by the way, I found this fourplex on Craigslist. It was a for sale by owner
Nice.
at the time. Yeah, it was perfect timing, honestly. So this was right before everybody flooded into the markets, right? So yeah, this is in again 2017. Found off market. The numbers worked. It met the 1% rule. It was a newer built property, so I guess hope to have less problems with the plumbing or electrical
Right.
and that kind of stuff. And so I was like, we went and looked at it. It was a great looking property, well taken care of. And so I ran the numbers using a 10% down, and it worked enough for me anyways to get started. It was at that
Yeah.
point, it was like it's this or nothing, I guess. And so I knew that the only way to really make it work initially is like I gotta self-manage it. I could definitely pay a property manager, but it would definitely would reduce those income a lot. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna self-manage this. So I first of all wanted to learn the process. I want to get familiar with the how you do it and the people and the business itself. So I decided to self-manage it, which I now, 5.5 years later, I still self-manage it, honestly,
Okay.
because I've got the processes and things down now that it does not take much time to do that, to the point of paying somebody else to do less of a job for what I do. And so anyway, so yeah, just all those things was what led me to that. And if I wouldn't have discovered, I guess the possibility of using a 401k to make that down payment, and combined with a 10% down payment lender, I don't think I would have probably made that decision to buy it, or had the ability to buy it.
Right.
But for me, it came down to there was two things. There was definitely a lot of fear, for sure. I was definitely afraid. Even like literally the day before closing, I even mentioned to my wife, maybe we should just back out, not close it, just walk away, lose our earnest money, because it was a huge risk. Because like if this blows up in our face, I mean, not only are we screwed from the loan we took in from the bank on this, but also my 401k is now going to be depleted, and
Right.
could be a big problem. And so, but I went back and relied on the numbers. I was like, okay, the analysis looks good.
Yep.
This is a good property. I've got to get started somehow. And so far, of all the other hundreds of properties that I've analyzed, this is the best one we've seen so far.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I've got to give it a chance. I got to get past that fear and just trust the numbers are good and I can make this work. I'll have to make this work. And here I am 5.5 years later, and it worked. So
No,
it was definitely the right decision to make. Yeah.
that's a great story. And we're gonna take a quick sponsor break, but when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit about how much time it took him to manage these properties and kind of how much time he invested kind of outside of his W-2 to kind of make this start. So we'll be right back.
Whether you're trying to hire a full-time employee or a contractor to fill a gap, Hire Tomorrow can help. Hire Tomorrow is a boutique recruitment firm that has successfully filled sales and marketing, human resources, and technology positions with companies ranging from startups to Fortune 500. If you're struggling to find the right talent, check out hiretomorrow.com or reach out to recruiting@hiretomorrow.com to see how they can help.
All right, we are back to the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast with Don. Before we jumped out of the sponsor break, he had talked about buying his first duplex as a W-2 employee. So he got very active in his investing kind of right off the bat. He didn't start passive investing. He went right into the active because he had some needs to increase his income. So I wanted to kind of, again, a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are people that are working a W-2 job, and maybe they have some money they want to invest, but they don't know how to get started. So, maybe they don't want to get as active as you were in kind of analyzing hundreds of deals. But, if they do, how much time did it take you? Because obviously you're working, arguably probably 40 or plus hours a week, right?
Yep.
And so it sounds like you have a family, so you've got personal obligations. So, how much time are you taking, and how did you balance it all?
Yeah. Well, I was definitely working probably, I'd say at least 50 to 55 hours per week for my W-2, right? I was definitely working overtime because I pretty much had to.
Yeah.
That was my only option to make more money, is work extra hours. So, so what I would do is just work during the day as much as I could, obviously, for my job. And then I would spend my evening looking for deals, analyzing deals, contacting people, trying to get on, email lists for wholesalers and things. But yeah, I would just, actively search on, like Realtor.com, or at the time we had a Keller Williams app on my phone as well. I just searched local properties and properties in other areas just to get familiar with the numbers and the process to analyze.
Yeah.
So the analysis part definitely was taking a good amount of time overall. Is mostly from the searching part. Find the property. Running the numbers goes pretty quickly once you get used to it. But it's more of finding the right ones, and then everything else that comes up after making the offer and everything else. We'd definitely made a few other offers in between there, some before and some after that first fourplex. But for different reasons, we ended up backing out. It was just didn't pass the inspection, or we got outbid, obviously.
Yeah.
But afterwards, managing the property. So that first property, at first, mainly again because I had to. I did not have the savings or I guess the mindset yet to make those expenses to pay somebody else to do things. So I did a lot myself.
Yeah.
Not just the managing side part. It really wasn't that bad. I met with, as soon as we closed the property, I met with all the tenants, discussed, how they feel there, anything they want to see changed, that kind of stuff, just get to know them, get them set up on the proper, payment methods and things. So, because the previous owner would go by and collect their payments in person in cash. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
this
right.
is this first of all it's like 45 minutes away. So I'm like, I'm definitely not going to show up here and have you not be here. So I set up a local bank account. You can go there and deposit it in this account. I had it set up to receive notifications. So when money would be deposited, I could then just transfer it to another account immediately.
Yep.
It was set up, of course, that they couldn't withdraw. It was just only deposit only.
Right.
And then I also set them up on a payment online option. I gave them two options: you could either pay online or pay at the deposit at the bank. And then so that made that part much simpler. I would use create my then it took, I guess, some time up front to create like a good lease agreement, which I kind of took several and kind of combined them into one that I liked a lot. And on lease renewals and things, we just use, again, my wife was a realtor. She had access to things like DocuSign or whatever, so I could do all these e-sign stuff. So I just
got it. Yeah.
send those to them. That way, e-sign everything. I would typically do the first, in-person one. In person is was when I release a new property. Okay, we show them everything, and they sign everything in person to go everything together. But after that, all the lease renewals are always just e-signs. What did take probably too much time initially was the cleaning and things. As somebody move out, I would myself go with usually my kids and go hang out there and clean the property as much as we could. Do fix the small stuff we could fix, paint, all those things, which were a good experience to do. But as time went on, I realized that takes a lot of time, and the longer time it takes to get a place rented is also lost income rent.
Right.
So I finally got to the point where I found a good handyman. I started using the handyman to do all the small things and fix things and clean. And that definitely was worth paying somebody else to do those jobs rather than me taking the time to drive down there and do those things and get it rented out, assumedly much quicker. So I started doing that, and at the point now today, I pretty much don't do anything at the property other than, I'll do some the walkthrough inspections, and I would have to show the property once in a while. But honestly, it does not take, I would say probably minutes per month on a normal month. So if I don't have any showings or anything to do, it's pretty much no time. And so
it's just collecting checks. That's the best part about it. Just collecting.
Pretty much, yeah. As long as you do the a good job of pre-screening up front. To get the right people in there, then it's you usually have no problem. And I still one of the reasons I still self-manage today is a property manager in the area that manages the properties that are around this one. When I talked to him a few years ago, he was not willing to rent them for what I was renting them for already. So I was already renting them above what he's renting the other units on the other buildings. And so I was like, so you want me to pay you to rent it for less than what I'm renting for now?
Right,
so no thanks.
Right.
Because he said his reason was because they rent them faster that way. I'm like, well, I rent them still within a week when I list them at the price I'm renting them for. So yeah, no thanks. So that's the main reason I still self-manage it today. And again, I've got the systems and processes done now that and I screen my tenants well, that it really takes no time at all. So it's not worth it to me to pay somebody else to do that. So if you do all that stuff right, it can be done with very limited time. And I let all my tenants know, at least at the time when I was working my W-2, that if there's an emergency, call me, send me a text, something. If it's not non-emergency, send me an email or something, and I'll respond later, as needed. But so
got it. No, that's super interesting. And we have a similar kind of path. I bought a duplex. That was our first property, but I underwrote the deal. Every deal I underwrote, because I wasn't buying it in where I lived in Philadelphia at the time. I bought it actually in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is 4 or 5 hours away. I underwrote it so it had the ability to have property management, because I knew I wasn't gonna, be able to travel across the state of Pennsylvania to, get tenants and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's interesting, kind of being able to underwrite with it or without it. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm glad that it
Yeah.
kind of has worked out for you.
Well,
So
no, yeah, I definitely still did underwrite it with the management in place, just to know that it's at least going to be positive, right?
right,
And initially it was not very much, but obviously it's increased a lot since then as I've increased the rents and things, and eventually even refinanced the property and pulled out, much more money than I put down on it, which I've
oh,
since
that's brilliant.
reinvested in, and it's still cash flow as well too. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's transition to from your duplex, and now you're doing RV resort syndication. So I do a
Yeah.
lot of multifamily syndication, so I understand the syndication part of it. But
Sure.
how did you get into the resort space? And then talk me through some deals that you've done and some of the metrics and returns and all that fun stuff, because I'm very curious, both from an investor, but also just from potentially some of my listeners could be interested too.
Definitely. So when I first started out, bought that first fourplex, first of all, I did not know anybody doing syndication. So I did not have access to do any passive investing. And the ones that maybe I found out about later still usually required much more than I had available to invest anyway. So
Yeah.
it was not much passive investing I could really do at the time. And so when I set out on that path, buying that first fourplex, I did not intend to end up doing what I'm doing today. That's for sure. I had a goal in mind. I was going to keep buying a bunch of fourplexes and use that as my path to early retirement.
Yeah.
But as opportunities came up, I just discovered things and looking at the overall returns, because again, my goal was cash flow. I need to get that cash flow was my main number one goal above all
Yep.
else, so that I could have that income needed to leave my job. And so over time, as I've done several different things and got involved in some development projects and some other syndication deals for build to rent multifamily, I was always looking for opportunities in value add multifamily, like it sounds like what you do, right? So,
Yep.
but for me, as I was analyzing those opportunities the last couple of years, and especially in 2021, I was not seeing anything that really stood out to me as a great deal. The returns that they were offering were just, I'd say average. Nothing that really was, again, and something that would make me get to my goal any faster. So like just for example, anything I would underwrite myself, like a fourplex or other things I was looking after to get into, had to have double-digit cash on cash returns at a minimum.
Right.
Typically, preferably above 20% or 30%, even better. But as those numbers kind of were disappearing as prices are going up, that almost became impossible. But I still had hopes of at least double digit, 10, 12, 13, something in there. And I was not seeing it in multifamily. They were mostly focusing on the equity multiples, maybe doubling your money in 5 years, which again, for me, doubling wasn't also enough in 5 years for what I was looking for. And so as I continued to search and look into different opportunities that came up, I was getting almost to the point where I was ready to give up. I was like, maybe there's nothing else better out there. And so I was like, about just to invest in another multifamily in a syndication deal.
Yep.
But still at this point, working my job and still listening to podcasts every day. I heard on a podcast somewhere mid 2021 that somebody had mentioned a investing in campgrounds. And so this was something that was new to me at the time. I'd never heard of it before, and I think most of the people hadn't either. And so the more I thought about that, I was like, hey, there could be an opportunity here. The returns from what was mentioned on this podcast were much higher than I was seeing anywhere else. I live in an area where camping is like a lifestyle, right? Everybody around here has RVs, and pretty much every house has an RV pad. We're like an hour and a half away from Yellowstone Park, so yeah, it's a whole thing here. So I was like, okay, maybe there's some opportunities here to get my foot in the door and do something. So I started going to webinars and different events with people that are in that space, just to get to know it more, get to know people there. Offering myself as possible boots on the ground to go take videos or pictures if they want to buy in this area. And so just in doing that, it just, I guess, general networking, commenting on posts on social media, I eventually got in contact with someone who's now one of my partners, he and his founding partner, so Adam Lindy and Justin Hoggett, they had just bought their first campground property in early 2021.
Okay.
And they were looking to grow their team, expand, and do more, because they knew they couldn't do it on that. That first one was a lot of work for them to do by themselves, and they realized they could not scale on their own. So they were looking to expand and grow the team. So as we later on then met later that year, kind of discussed what I was myself searching for, and just in general, the returns and the opportunities. I was wanting also to find partners, possibly to form a partnership to do syndications and things. And and so they discussed, of course, their goals and what they were planning to do down the road, and how their vision for the future of the company. And everything kind of seemed just to align, just right. Like, I had what they were looking for, and they had what I was looking for. And so they invited me to join with them and become part of Happy Camper Capital, which I initially kind of reluctantly wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know. As much as I like this and I want to invest in it, I'm not sure if I want to be part of this because I don't understand enough. I was all multifamily. I was in a couple of multifamily masterminds, and I was like, people know me as this person now trying to do these multifamily stuff. Now all of a sudden here, I'm talking about something else. Are they going to lose trust in me or faith in me or something? So I wasn't sure. But after a couple of days of thinking about it and considering my future, like what's it going to look like 3 years from now? Am I going to look back and regret not taking that chance? So I decided, I'm in this for me and my family, not for anybody else and their needs.
Right.
So I was like, if this works for me and I feel good about it, then what have I got to lose? I'm gonna give it a try. So I said yes, I'll join them, and I officially joined with Happy Camper Capital in November of 2021. I do not regret that decision. We've grown a lot, and we're growing a lot more. I've been able to introduce this company and our niche, what we do, to many other people to let them know there are other things out there besides just your standard multifamily stuff, and the opportunities are still growing, and the returns are still great. So I'm definitely happy that I made that decision and decided to look past those fears of what people are going to think or say, because this is what, again, you do this for yourself. You don't do it for other people.
Totally. No, and I guess, can you share a little bit more about what attracted you, what kind of returns they are? Is it like, a typical syndication in multifamily, is a 5-year hold, right? So like, what are the metrics? How do you position it to your investors?
Definitely. Well, we still do a 5-year hold because that's pretty much standard. But these properties are just to give some understanding of comprehension what it is, right? These are not mobile home parks, so don't think of it like that aspect. These are short-term stay, vacation destination campgrounds, basically. Right. People own RVs or campers, or whatever, go to a place to camp and have fun. There's amenities, things on site to play with and do. So they're paying a premium to stay at a place to do those entertaining things, and then they go back home. So don't have to worry about evictions and that kind of stuff. And so with that typically is going to bring in a much higher income. Just same if you think like a short-term rental versus a long-term rental single family. And so the properties that we are targeting about a 12 to 15% cash on cash as an average for that 5-year hold, and then a 2.5 to 3x multiple. So when you compare that to the other, say, standard multifamily, that's pretty much almost double or more of what you're seeing in those cases, especially for the cash flow, right? The cash flow, again, that's what initially drew me to this space more than equity multiples, because I needed cash flow. That was my goal, as always, and it still is today. It's like, if it doesn't cash flow day one, then it's too risky for me. I'm not super wealthy to say that cash flow doesn't matter. It does matter to me, right? If it doesn't cash flow, then I'm not going to take the risk of it. Maybe appreciate it or maybe not. And so that's really what drew me to this. And on top of that, not to worry about the evictions, because I did have a couple properties during the eviction moratorium time of the pandemic, where a couple of tenants that didn't pay, almost entire year. Not here in Idaho, but the properties I have in Arkansas, I had that issue with. I've now since actually sold those properties and reinvested all of that capital back into Happy Camper Capital now, so I can get better returns and not have to deal with those kind of issues. And so people are looking for higher cash flow returns, then this is, I personally have not seen anything better to invest in, at least as a passive investor, to make that happen. And on top of that, the added benefit is you can actually go to the property and hang out there, have fun, create your own memories and experiences there. Right. So you can enjoy it.
And how, I'm curious, just from a, campgrounds, camping is almost like I don't want to say it's a nice to have, but it's sometimes a vacation, right? And so, we're recording this in kind of mid-February 2023. There's talks of high interest rates, potential recession, all that fun stuff. Like, what's your break-even occupancy? And I'm getting a little technical, but what's your break-even occupancy to kind of make this thing cash flow? Because these are short-term deals, right? People don't have to, go camping. The benefit of multifamily sometimes is people have to have someplace to live. So I'm just kind of curious kind of how that metric flushes out during kind of a, potential slowdown.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, let me mention though that if you think about people that own an RV or camper or Class A motorhome, for example, these are usually luxury items, right? It's not some kind of thing you just get because you need it. It's a thing because you have money to spend. So
Right.
so people that own them, they want to use them. They're not just going to sit in their driveway and not go use them somewhere. So that for this, the space is relatively, we'll say recession resistant for that reason. Both the high end, the income earners, but also the low end people that may need to cut back on expenses. So they still want to take a vacation. People still want to get out and have fun. So they may decide to not go to Florida this year for Disney World or whatever, but they'll
Right.
stay somewhere nearby, have maybe a more affordable, close to home vacation, and just to get out and have fun, go boating on the lake or something. And so all types of asset or income level of households can go to these properties and do go to these properties. That trend has been growing pre-pandemic every single year and up, and it still is today.
Yep.
But for us to break even, basically, we typically underwrite between a 20 to 30% occupancy. So they do not have to have much occupancy at all, honestly, to get those kind of returns. And
20 to
that's you're counting
30%
for
occupied.
the right for the year,
Wow.
right? So these are not long-term stays. So if you think about that, that breaks down to, and you consider most of the campgrounds are always going to be packed year-round during weekends and holidays.
Right.
But midweek they're maybe not as packed, much more vacant, not people there. So that is what kind of makes it that difference of that occupancy, why it looks so low
Yeah.
compared to the whole number of the year when you consider mainly the weekends. But yeah, so that's kind of where the realm that we play in between 20 to 30% occupancy.
That's very interesting. No, we could spend an hour probably talking about the ins and outs. We don't need to do that on this episode, but maybe we can
Yeah.
have you back and we can talk more about it. So kind of as I mentioned about my audience and who typically listens to this podcast, like, so if you think about, put yourself, because you quit your W-2, right? And now you're full-time in Happy Camper Capital, you're full-time into real estate and making this kind of your lifestyle. So think about somebody that is, just learning about or just starting their real estate journey, right? Maybe they listen to a podcast, they read a book, they're listening to this podcast, and they're thinking, okay, I want to start my journey passively. Like, what do you think is a really good first step for somebody to, start their passive real estate investing journey, whether it's multifamily, small duplex multifamily, camping grounds, all that fun stuff. Like, what do you think is a good first step?
Well, definitely, no matter where you're at, education is a big part. You need to understand it, because I can sit here and spout numbers all day long, and so can you or anybody else. But
Right.
unless you understand what all that means, it doesn't really matter. You need to be able to review it, consider it yourself, to run your own numbers, just to compare it and see if this person's full of fluff or are they telling the truth here.
Yeah.
So the kind of one of those the scientific things like trust but verify, right? You want take it as words. Okay, it sounds good. I trust you're going to be telling me the truth, but I'm going to run my own numbers just to make sure that this is what you say it is.
Right.
So that's definitely a big point, is to know how to do that, to understand what it means, but also is get to know, I guess, review your goals and what is going to work for you, right? What if you have a comfort level, a certain level of risk aversion or whatever that will guide you to what fits for you and what sounds good and comfortable for you. If you are a person that loves outdoors already, you go camping, this may work for you just fine because it's something you understand already. Which is, again, a big thing to help me make that decision to join the team was some of my neighbors who would never invest in real estate ever, but they go camping all the time. So they when I mentioned to them about investing in campgrounds, they were like, yeah, that sounds like a fantastic idea. It's something they understand, right? So consider that, and obviously then start following and getting to know people that are in that space, or whatever it may be, multifamily, self-storage, whatever it may be. Find people that are in that space, follow them for a while, kind of see what they're doing, what they're talking about. Don't just rush into it just because you heard something on a podcast.
Right.
Go and find out and talk to that person. Talk to me if you're interested in this. I'm happy to discuss your goals and this is going to work for you. But yeah, do all those things and make the best decision that works for you and your family.
Awesome. No, that's great. So kind of want to wrap up here. I've got a 3-pack of questions I ask every guest as they come on the show. So first question is, what is one piece of advice that got you started or helped you along your real estate journey?
Piece of advice. I don't know. Honestly, it was the kind of thing for me. I think I'm a bit unique. Maybe not. I don't know. But I typically don't like to follow crowds. Right. That's kind of what led me to do what I'm doing with with campground space these days is
Right.
I like being unique and different and following my own path, I guess, not just following what everybody else does. And so maybe with that, it was, the I don't know, this me being who I am today, I guess, is what led me to this. Is I've always had an interest in numbers and investing and things. Since I was 14 years old, I was following stock numbers in the newspapers, right? So um, my entire life of education is pretty much what led me to this point. But I knew that for me, going back to what we talked about with that fourplex, is this investing in real estate was to me the only route for me that would work for me to get to that financial independence. I've been following the FIRE movement for a long time, and they're big about building up your retirement account, to million, 2 million, and live off that dividend interest. But I was never going to make that happen. I don't have the income to build up that level of retirement, and so to me, I discovered one day, I just had the epiphany that real estate is the shortcut to financial independence. If you can find a way to make that cash flow come in, that's all you really need. And then eventually, like I did that fourplex, you can refinance and get your money back out of it, and eventually,
Right.
have that income coming with no money actually invested in it.
Yep. Yeah. The old infinite return, the ideal scenario, right? That's perfect. Cool. Second question. What is your favorite real estate or business book that you're into right now?
Let's see here. There's several, honestly. I guess one that I'll recommend if most people listening here are fairly new, I guess, or wanting to get to that point is mindset is a big thing. Again, that mindset is what almost prevented me from buying that first property.
Yeah.
Because of fear. So if you can understand and trust the numbers and understand how money works for you, that was going to make maybe a key difference to give you that motivation to make that first step. So I highly recommend The Richest Man in Babylon.
Okay.
It's a fairly short read, for people that don't like reading, because I was also everyone liked reading, but I do enjoy reading about real estate and finances things now. But The Richest Man in Babylon is not particularly a real estate book or really a finance book or anything, but it's just general topics of all those things: investing, finance, business tactics, and whatever. But it's I think in a way it's a very good written out story that makes sense and helps you learn all those topics along the way in a way that I guess you can relate to them.
Yeah, no, that's great. I read that one early on, and yeah, it is a short read, and I appreciated that because I'm not a massive book reader myself, so it was kind of fitting. So cool. So last question: if you hit your financial freedom number, meaning you could live an amazing life just on your passive income from real estate, what would you do?
Two things. One is just give as much of my time as I could to volunteering.
Okay.
Giving back and doing good in the world. That's ultimately what my legacy I hope will be, is the good things I do in the world. And then the second thing would be just to travel. Travel with my family, my wife and my kids. Actually, we all enjoy traveling, and there's many places around the world we have not seen yet. So I definitely want to do a lot more traveling and go to like my personal dream destination to get to still is Egypt. I'm
Okay.
a big ancient Egyptian fan, I guess, and so
Got it.
I still want to get out there and see all those things in person. But my wife is from South America, so we go to South America quite often just to go see her family and things. But yeah, so I would volunteer a lot just to do and donate, helping the community and things like that, and then travel as well.
Got it. No, awesome. Don, man, really appreciate you coming on the show. How can the audience get in touch with you if they want to reach out and chat?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I post almost daily. So find me on LinkedIn, or also on Facebook. You can visit our website, happycampercapital.com. If you want to get a hold of me specifically directly, you can go to our website, happycampercapital.com, go to the About Us tab and click on my name. At the bottom right of that screen, you will see a link to schedule a time to have a call. So you can find me there.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll have all that stuff in the show notes, so no need to jot that down, audience. But Don, man, thank you very much for being on the pod. It was great. And audience, I really hope you took something away from this episode. I've got another one dropping soon, so keep listening. And remember, you don't have to quit your career to build a passive real estate portfolio that will provide you with multiple streams of passive income. You just need to take some action. And by listening to this podcast, you've taken an awesome first step. Don, man, really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you got value out of this episode of the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast. Your one-stop shop for education on how you can continue to work hard in your career and have different options to invest even harder. If you took anything away from this episode, please leave a written review. I read every review as it helps me serve you better. If you're listening to this podcast, it means that you want to grow your passive real estate portfolio. The easiest way to do that is to join our investor club by heading to greatventurecapital.com/invest. The link is in the show notes. See you on the next episode.